Hi friends, good evening. I'm happy to introduce Naresh V. Narasimhan, who's also my guru in many ways. I've been part of with him for the last 26 years. Naresh is an architect by profession. He's also an entrepreneur and activist. He's the managing partner of Venkatraman Associates, an award-winning architectural practice. He studied architecture at Manipal Institute of Technologies, followed by further education at Harvard Institute on International Development. In addition to architectural practice, his contribution to urban development as an urbanist, activist, and creative entrepreneur has been far-reaching. He's one of the co-founder of Bangalore Agenda Task Force, BATF, a co-founder of Mod Institute, an international collective of urban designers, researchers, and curators. And he's also the founder and chairman of Numa Bengaluru, a co-working corporate innovation and business accelerator for startups. He advises government agencies on infrastructure development, urban planning, and policy making. His interest ranges from studying startup ecosystem, open data, and institutional development to cinema, art, and popular culture. Thank you, Mr. Naresh, for giving us your time today. We look forward to your presentation. Over to you. Thank you.
Hello, yeah. Thank you for that. Sometimes I wonder whether I am all those people. Anyway. Yeah, but I've been hanging around for some time, so I assumed that I would have done something in... This is my 35th year in continuous architectural practice. And this COVID scenario that we're all going through, all of us got a lot of free time to sit and think about what is important to us and what is not important. And how do you separate the two? And many of the things that we took for granted, that is, somebody joked yesterday that, enough of 8, 9, 10% growth, we are going to go back to the Hindu rate of growth for the next few years, which is 3% a year. And according to me, 3% a year, I think is the sustainable growth number for India. That's why it's called the Hindu rate of growth. But it also started getting me thinking on that, what I will do is I will walk you all through a presentation, but feel free to ask me questions, or if anybody feels that any point needs instant clarification, ask me. But if you can reserve your questions till the end, I'd be happy to answer any questions afterwards. So can I share my screen and start a presentation with you all? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so just give me 1 minute. Let me just... Okay. Now, can you all see it? Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I have I've chosen an unusual title for the presentation because I feel that we're already starting to lose it. But when this COVID thing came along, everybody thought it was the kiss of death, right? But according to me, if you look at it in another way, we have a thing in India saying that everything that happens only for the good. Even if something bad happens to you, we have a way of justifying it, saying that, in the long term, it happened for the good only. So I'm saying actually it is the kiss of life. So I know it's a controversial thing to say that COVID is the kiss of life, but I'll try to make my point in the next few slides. Okay. All of us have forgotten about these images already. This is all in early April, when we started finding that, the word we used called urban jungle had not gone very far away from the urban. The moment no human beings were on the street, all these guys came back to say hello to us. Can you believe that the image on the right is in the heart of Bombay? Of course, in Parsi Bagh or Dadar Bagh. And the Nilgai bull is happily one. There were many pictures like this of feral cats walking through Kerala, lot of lotuses blooming suddenly. You must be remembering all of it. People are forgetting these images already. So for me, this distinction is very, very... We are actually learned how to live divorced from nature. And COVID has actually taught us that nature is right next to us if we want to be part of it. This was the picture on Yamuna River 1 week before the shutdown. Right? On 18th March, the picture on the left was taken. And the picture on the right was taken 3 weeks later. Right? Can you believe the difference? All of us know about the pollution in Delhi. And the pollution in Delhi in 15 days from the lockdown, that is March 22nd, dropped to 46% and the PM10 dropped to by 50% instantly. And the Yamuna water actually became fresh water, and you can even see the quality of the sky. Both the tattvas are there in one image, and the fish started coming back into Yamuna. So clearly human beings are the problem, right? We understood that from COVID, right? Nature, everybody started hearing bird songs outside their house, right? Bangalore pollution level became very low. The sky started looking very blue. Electricity consumption went down. And the amount of solid waste created in the city had a dramatic fall of almost 35% compared to what it is normally overnight, right? And it is an ironic thing that that we find that the city became more livable when nobody lived in it, and the nature came back. This is a picture of City Market. That's a picture of Alsur Lake, etc., etc. And where are the people? Where are the cars? And the place looks like somewhere abroad or something. It doesn't look like Bangalore anymore, right? And then what happened? The moment the lockdown was lifted, within 1 month of lockdown lifting, all these fellows came back. The lake hasn't caught fire yet, but other than that, the traffic is back, the garbage is back, foam has started coming. Today morning, Vishabhavati was bright yellow and stinking to high heaven. No, we seem to think that we live separate from nature, and we don't understand that we are also Prakriti. Human beings are also nature. We are not separate from it. Right? And then how does the government deal with the problem? Is that from a governance viewpoint, we have a governance system that only does event management. It doesn't think long term. If there is a problem, they will put a band-aid. Somebody will say there is a water crisis. Somebody will say ban all construction for 5 years. How many livelihoods will get affected? Where will people live? Nobody will talk. Or if they want, there's a traffic jam, they say put a flyover. The only place the flyover is required in the city is somewhere where the ring road meets the arterial road and over a railway bridge. Nowhere else is a flyover required. Existing ones in the city must be dismantled. We should stop building infrastructure in the city for cars, and we should instead build infrastructure for people. I've been fighting with this government for a long time, saying with one flyover, I can build 40 kilometers of footpath. For 1 kilometer of flyover, whatever you have, I will make 40 kilometers of footpath on both sides. I think it's a much bigger investment, because the biggest asset we all have is this, what I call mobility asset, is what I call number 11, which is your own 2 feet. You should walk. Everything that is available to you for a daily life should be available 15 minutes walking from your house. Now, everything else, we can decide whether to go by car or by metro or by other public transport, right? And India, this is the problem with India. The politicians conflate the word development with building flyovers. And if the elevated corridor, elevated steel bridge, which I was one of the people objected against and got it cancelled, would have created a situation like what you see in the picture. It would have created a fantastic transportation problem, but it would have killed the city. There will be no city left at all after that. No urban center left, right? Think of the Pancha Tattvas by which we all live by, the Panchaputas or Pancha Tattvas of India. If you look at the larger picture beyond Bangalore, is that the guys on the left, this is the pre-COVID picture, right? On the bottom, in Delhi, you can see India Gate in the background, and everybody is wearing a mask. Is this the kind of city you want to live in? You should wear a mask because of COVID, not because of air pollution. Right? And look at the air pollution of India. The purple part here, this part, is completely unlivable. The entire Gangetic Plain, not just, this is Delhi, somewhere here, and the entire Gangetic Plain is a toxic mess. And the other rest of India, Bangalore is right here where my mouse is pointing. That is also getting to be worse. The international standard for pollution is 10 PM 2.5 particles is what is allowed. Indian standard is 40. Bangalore is already at 160 or 170. And the highest scale in the AQI, air quality index, is 500, is 499. And Delhi has gone to 800. No, is this the kind of society we want to live in, where in the pursuit of market and economic process and so-called prosperity, we are killing ourselves by the air we breathe and the water we And look at the water. In India, either we have too much water, people are getting flooded, or the fellows that don't have any water at all. And rapidly, now we are depleting the groundwater at the rate exceeding the recharge capacity by a factor of 5 or 6. And you can already see a lot of water stressed regions in India. There's very little groundwater is being pumped out at an alarming rate, right? And he says that this is the statistic which I want to bring. Almost the same amount of people in India are affected by drought and affected by floods at the same time. It's a very bizarre country that way, right? And now farmland is slowly starting to get eroded. Already 30 because of excessive use of chemical fertilizer, urea, and forgetting all about our organic way of living, organic brains of India, how to grow vegetables. 30% of land is already becoming desert. These are all very alarming statistics. This is the river map of India, and Niti Aayog last year, 2 years back, they gave a report saying, can you imagine 115 million people is a lot of people. It's the enormous amount of people will not have any access to food because it's completely polluted with sewage and bad and desertification at the same time. Right? The one thing we managed to figure out in India is how to get the mobile phone and internet running. That we know this is the kind of picture on the left. We all used to see it in the early days of mobile phones. Now if they don't have it, we think something is wrong with them. And that has created a revolution in India. But you also see that the entire India now has got this golden quadrilateral road network across the country. And there is no reason why we should still have only, there are two things. We should not have only 5 or 6 big cities. We need 50 big cities in India or 100 big cities because people want to come to urban areas for economic reasons. At the same time, we should know how to create new cities and not crowd them up in the existing ones. Already the existing ones are at bursting capacity. And there are 660 other cities in India which can easily be developed using this road network and finding out where there is water. Right? Look at the city density of India. Very few cities that light green are the ones above 5 million. And in all our cities, the image on the bottom left shows you the inequity, right? There are fancy guys living in apartments like this with a lot of greenery on the right. Next to it is the slum. The density of the slum is 10 times the density of this residential neighborhood, which is what you would consider a nice place to live. And the residential neighborhood also fronts the Nala, and all the sanitation and human waste goes into that. This is actually in Bombay, right? And look at the economic disparity of India. The 1% of the people of India own more than 50% of all its wealth. So there's a huge inequity in distribution. But India is going through an urban transformation, right? There are already, out of 1.3 billion people, 377 are there in urban areas according to government statistics. If you take the census towns, it's almost close to 600 million people. Half the country now lives in the city or a town. Right? This is the map of India. You can see in the night how the light of India reflects where the population centers are. Right? And if I say crores, millions, billions, nobody understands. If I tell you that every single month, 10 lakh people from the hinterland come into the city every month, that means 30 crore more people will increase in the city. 300 million more people. India will become 75% urban and only 25% rural in another 20 years. Right? What does the government do? It keeps coming up with problem solving. It does not address the core issue. It just takes the symptom, okay, like allopathy, and just treats the symptom. Does never fixes the core issue. They'll keep coming up with these huge names like JN, URM, and the word renewal. In this mission, they spent 30,000 crores on this mission. Not even one renewal project was taken in the entire mission. And you keep having new things like this. It's not very clear what these things achieve because they're all operating in silos. And you'll have, every now and then, the government will make one new announcement, Swachh Bharat, National Clean Air, Namami. You don't see an overall strategy in the country saying, how am I going to deal with 900 million people who come to the city? How do they get clean housing? How do their children get good education? How do they How are the women and the elderly people? How are they safe? Why are there no footpaths? Why is there no clean mobility, etc., etc.? So the number of programs of government go on and on. We just pulled out a few to show you. But, really speaking, the only thing I would say give marks to this current government is that instead of giving subsidies, indirect subsidies, they're actually using that Jan Dhan Yojana, they're giving money to people in their bank account and say, do whatever you want with it. I think that's much better than, because it was estimated that of every 100 rupees of subsidy, less than 5 rupees was reaching the actual beneficiary. Right? So what we do is in India, we make this big mistake of thinking in silos. Everything is interrelated. But if you start, one government will say, let's do housing for the poor. Somebody will say, rejuvenate urban water body. There is no consistent idea that urban livelihood, urban economy, and urban fabric are all indivisible from each other. Right? R.K. Lakshman, this is nothing new. R.K. Lakshman drew this cartoon in 1975. Look at that. Nothing has changed. They will repair one. All of you know that they'll tar your road in front of your house. Next day morning, they'll come and dig it up for a pipe. Because they don't talk to each other. None of these agencies. And every public project goes through this vicious cycle where they start a project, there'll be no accountability, nobody has any responsibility, and then there'll be no baseline data. Again, they'll build something, break it again, and each guy will not talk to each other. And after they build some nonsense, they will never maintain it, and the service quality will degrade. And it will go back. It's called a nice vicious cycle. The government will show you images like what is there on the top here, all fancy looking trains and skyscrapers. What is the reality is what is below. Right? This will never change. Look at Bangalore itself as an example. I assume all of you are from Bangalore. And this is not happened. Many times I think this is done on purpose. It is not an error of omission. It is an error of commission. Because through the gaps in these kind of overlapping authority, there are so many agencies. There are just a few of the agencies controlling Bangalore. And each one has a different idea of the size of Bangalore. Right? Nobody talks to each other. The metro thinks Bangalore is one size. The BBMP thinks it is another size. BWSSB thinks it is something else. The police department thinks it's something else altogether. There is no coordination at all. My job as an architect now and as an urbanist, more and more, is to make one map for every agency controlling the city. And slowly we are doing that now. This many people control your city, the inner circle on a daily basis. The intermediate circle, they control you on a policy basis. And the guys on the outside are the government of India, whose rules you have to follow. And these guys also have a say in the say of Bangalore. The interesting part is none of these guys talk to each other, which is the fundamental problem. And there is no government mechanism made to make them talk to each other. Everybody asks, what is the vision for Bangalore? The BDA had published a master plan a couple of years ago called Bangalore in 2031. Current population of Bangalore is 1.2 crore. They think the population is going to double. However, the area of Bangalore has not changed. It remains the same, 1,279 square kilometers, out of which only 800 kilometers is urban and 400 kilometers is green belt. The amount of housing in Bangalore has increased 600% in the last 1 decade. That is why it's starting to look very crowded. The third figure is very important. Very few people know that the current GDP of Bangalore is about $75 billion of economic output. They think in 10 years from now, the economy will go to $300 billion, almost a 4-time increase. Now, to create that money, where are the people going to come from? Mobility in Bangalore is the worst in the world. It has one vehicle or 1.5 vehicle per person of population. That means there are 80 lakh vehicles on Bangalore's roads for a population of 1.2 crore. Bombay has a population of 2.5 crore, right? I'm sorry, I'm not saying it correctly. It has a population of 2.5 crore and a vehicle population of only 40 lakhs because they have an efficient suburban train system and people are used to using public transport. Bangalore, if any more vehicles get added, we are finished. The funniest part is 50% of Bangalore moves in buses. And there are only 8,000 buses in Bangalore. Is occupying 0.3% of road surface compared to two-wheelers and cars and other vehicles. Lifestyle, Bangalore has run out of water. Bangalore will need 52 TMC feet of water. The maximum water available to Bangalore according to Kaveri 4th stage award is 21 TMC feet. Where is the 30 TMC feet comes from? Nobody knows. No idea also, no vision. So I also already mentioned housing. Housing for us they're all privileged people. We live in apartments, we live in houses. But a lot of people live in really bad quality things like this. The people who come to work for you, this is not the way. And the rich people live in gated communities and they think that the rest of the world doesn't matter. And there is a floating population also we have to consider who come and work in this city. More than 40%, people will be shocked to hear this, more than 40% of households have only one room, which is multi-purpose room, that's all. You can see from the illustration, at night they sleep like this, in the day they roll the beds and do everything else according to that. And, it's like, this is a very dehumanizing way to conduct a life with a family. A lot of people think the largest employment in Bangalore is IT, right? And you see all fancy pictures like what you see on the left. When you Google Bangalore and you say Google Images, the picture on the left will come. But the picture in the middle is the highest employer of Bangalore. I don't know whether any of you can guess, but that is the largest garment factory in Bangalore. And garment factory has 11 lakh people working for them. The IT industry has about 8 lakh totally out of the total population. Right? And IT guys get all these fancy campuses like you see on the right. And these guys have to put up with fairly. This is still a very good factory, but not as fancy as an IT plant. Right? What happened during the lockdown? In COVID time, TCS moved 90%. They have 3.5 lakh employees to remote working from home. And now they have announced that only 20% will be allowed to come back to office. 80% can stay at home and work. Maybe this is a great thing COVID has brought to us. It reduces commuting, and effectiveness doesn't seem to be spoiled very much. Right? All these people who come to the city, this is what I call my Panchatattva image. It has the air pollution, it has the lake, water, and it is the New York Times picture, which goes where the lake is burning, and it has housing, it has space, all in one picture. But this is not what we want as kind of Bellandur Lake is not what our lake should be like. Right? We've already got used to social distancing, but already this is falling by the wayside. I went to City Market yesterday. You would not believe that COVID even came to Bangalore. Please don't go there. I ran away from there. When I saw it, I said, nobody's following any rules. All these circles, all these have vanished already. Nobody is listening to anybody. Right? And in India, we have this thing called a master. Why do all these things happen? Why do the cities fall apart? We have a thing called a master planning culture, which is based on some United Kingdom law. And it is a very old-fashioned fossil fuel era planning mechanism, which assumes when the plan is being done, the whole city will remain exactly static. With the kind of population coming into the city and the rapidly changing system, this whole system of planning itself is a disaster and we should abandon it. Right? All architecture is, all architects, I am one too, but my major criticism is all architects think the world begins and ends at the boundary of their site. We don't pay any attention to the road. We don't pay any attention to the commons. We think that garbage is somebody else's problem. We don't take ownership and pride in our own city. Right? And the failure of planning causes this kind of what I call Burfi layout. All around Bangalore, agricultural land is cut up into Burfi shapes, and these are not the ideal environment for creating a kind of Mysore Pak layout, I call them. This is not the way to plan a logical growth of a city. All of you are already seeing, many of you who have young children, are sending your children 1 hour in a bus to go to school. A child should walk to school in 10 to 15 minutes. We have to stop this FSI way of looking at real estate and start looking at livelihood and life way of looking at real estate. Everything is not valuable real estate. Children should not be bused to schools way outside the city. But Bangalore is a strange city, right? We all love it. It has great climate. All the images you see in one image are Bangalore. And we have lots of things to be proud about. And in my opinion, it is the only city in India which can be recovered. And if all of us pledge today to put our collective energies and start with your own street and start saying that this is my city and I will look after it. It is not anybody else's problem. And these politicians whom we elect go and demand that they make your city better. Right? This is what we face. On the right side is ITPL. It looks like anywhere, it could be anywhere in the world. This is the compound wall of ITPL on the other. This is what it looks like on the road. Why should we continue to accept nonsense like this? No? This is not the way to, look at the quality of the road, look at the quality of the drain. And this is exactly the wall of ITPL on this side of ITPL. Right? There is no controls of street elevation. People are putting, every neighborhood is full of advertising and boards. And people should also not, we should start saying, instead of building huge residential complexes which look exactly like each other, we should allow mixed-use neighborhoods. One of the most successful neighborhoods in Bangalore, curious for all of you, some of you may be from there, which does not have a single footpath encroachment, is Basavangudi. Can you tell why? Because the planners 100 years ago, Sheshadri Iyer and the architect, made sure that everything was thought of. There is not a single footpath temple. There is not a single footpath encroachment in the whole of Basavangudi, because everything was thought of correctly at that time. Now, they used what is called a form-based code. We have now reduced city planning to mathematics and FSI. We should not do that. We should go away from that and say that each area has a character. Shanti Nagar is different from Indra Nagar. Indra Nagar is different from Old City. Old City is different from Basavangudi. And new areas, what should it be like? It should be a form-based code. It should not be a FSI-based code. Right? Look at Bangalore's population density. It is in some areas, the purple zones, it's very difficult to, it's hugely crowded, unhygienic, and not at all a great place to bring up a child or a family or to even live in. And in some places, there's hardly anybody. Up to about 15,000 people a square kilometer still gives you a livable density, and it also can easily support population. But instead of that, we are going and creating very uneven kind of distribution of the city. Right? So you should, instead of looking at the city as a whole, we should start looking at city as wards. And how can we make each ward self-sufficient? No solid waste must leave the ward. If you ask me, no liquid sewage also must leave the ward. Every ward must be self-sufficient in itself. And it must also have all components required to lead a healthy life. Right? We must also have multimodal public transport. We must have, a train service, a very good bus service. We must also have shared mobility services. Also, most important, we must have wide footpaths everywhere in the city and also cycle tracks everywhere. And stop endlessly trying to buy more and more cars and two-wheelers. Right? If you look at the migrant labor crisis that affected us during the COVID thing, and if you look at why do people move to Bangalore, 30% of the people move to Bangalore only for employment. And the 20% more come there with their own family. People don't come to Bangalore because of the weather or because they like us very much. They come here because there's a job. And really what the government should do is stop the growth of Bangalore. And there are 8 towns around Bangalore. And all you need to do is put a ring road. Look at how the growth centers and where is the employment of Bangalore. If you look at it, these are the 6 big industries of the Bangalore city. And this is where they are. And instead of developing the core city more and more, start developing the towns around Bangalore into vibrant urban centers. They also need pub, they also need multiplex, they also need coffee shop, they need whatever young people need. And companies will go there the moment the government can facilitate this kind of development. Decentralize Bangalore. Enough of Bangalore's growth. Right? And there are so many places just around Bangalore, you could actually carry that argument and saying you should actually do it in the whole of Karnataka. Why not develop Belagavi? Why not develop Raichur? Why not develop Davangere? Why only Bangalore, Bangalore, Bangalore all the time? 80% of Karnataka's output comes from Bangalore. And all of you know in COVID times, 80% of all aid to Karnataka is coming from Bangalore again. The development must be much more distributed. For Bangalore itself, it should be opened up like this, and 8 towns around Bangalore, all of you are familiar, should be developed properly. The city as a concept, with electronics and connectivity, and all of you have realized you can work from home as long as you have 10 Mbps broadband. So really speaking, there is now a big interest in moving to smaller towns. My prediction is that about 50% of the migrants who left Bangalore will never come back, because they now find that the city doesn't care about them, and they are much more happy making less money perhaps, but a much more fulfilling life in the towns that they came from. And we should start seeing cities as a field. We should make networks which are connected both by electronically as well as physically. Push the suburban train project in Bangalore and make it go in a ring all around Bangalore city. We need a very sound, holistic vision which looks at from everybody's interest. The flower seller in city market, the vegetable seller on your road, the garment worker, as well as the people in the organized sector. We have to have a vision which encompasses all of them, right? And also from a resource point of view, look after the water, make sure that we use sustainable energy, make sure that we set a personal example in this, etc. Our Indian culture always shows paintings and art of human beings living. These are all pictures of Krishna and Vrindavan, and it shows always that we are used to living in harmony with nature. In these last few years, we seem to have lost sight of that. I thank COVID for giving us that, what I call the kiss of life, in understanding that unless we do this, we do not have a sustainable future. In many of the projects of our own office, we try to always never cut trees, introduce water bodies, making sure that sustainability is a big factor in everything that we do. And we also have to learn to think different and change the system. And instead of a waste disposal system, you create something and you dispose of it in a landfill. You have to think of circular economies where everything is recycled many times before it goes out to becomes garbage. Right? We have enough of, we have also been talking to the government right now saying that we don't want to see like these scenes where urban waste goes and destroys our villages, poor villages. Instead, you should know how to green all of them and make them into green facilities. We are working on a project now to convert many of the stormwater drains and also hopefully the Vrishabhavati river, which looks like this, looks like a horrible stinking drain full of sewage, into a walking cycling track filled with fresh water. The first such project has already begun. Those of you who drive past Double Road, please get down and look at that drain. There is no sewage in it from yesterday. And soon you will see a pathway like this going from City Market to Bellandur. You can go cycling and walking. And no vehicles will be allowed in this area. And the fresh water storm water will be flowing, and you can go and have a good time there. What would you rather have, an image on the left or an image on the right? I think cycling has to be encouraged in Bangalore. For the first 20 years of my life, I used only a cycle. I'm also guilty. I then switched to vehicles, but I'm quite happy to switch back to cycles if it is safe and comfortable for me to do it. Right? We also have to learn how to design for zero waste, how to reuse. I already made that point about recycling, etc. Right? This is the mayor of Mysore on the top, and even now he goes to office by bicycle and sets an example. Right? And we also have to learn to grow our own vegetables. Most of the soppu and most of the underground vegetables you eat today are grown in the sewage that goes in our stormwater drains. And you're imbibing heavy metals and you're imbibing all kinds of harmful chemicals like that. It's quite easy to set up your terrace garden. I encourage a lot of you to do that. Right? So my thesis, and I'm ending here now, saying that there is no more incremental change possible in the way we live in our society. It is time for a quantum change, and we can only do it if all of us contribute and learn to have a sense of responsibility and build a Bangalore which our grandchildren you will be proud to say, I had a part in ensuring that the city is livable for you. Thank you. I'll stop here now, please.
Thanks, Naresh. Yeah. Anybody has questions, we can take it now.
Mr. Naresh Narasimhan, you have finished your talk?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for the excellent presentation, sir.
Okay, so thank you so much. It was a wonderful talk. Yeah. So we are opening the field for questions now. You can either raise your hand in this one on the video, or you can, even better, you can post it on the chat, and we can request Mr. Narasimhan to answer the questions. Can you please post it on the chat, please?
Rajesh Kundar, please go ahead.
If somebody, so one or two people can talk also. It's all right.
Yeah. Okay. Rajesh Kundar.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So when in the BATF days, I was a part of your team working with you, Kalpana Kar, and
Yes,
Nandan
yes, I remember.
Nilekani.
Yes, yes.
So I did my little part contribution to the solid waste management activity. So it was wonderful, and I'm seeing you after many, many years, and it was a wonderful talk. I mean, it is the right way to think. I mean, think at every stage of our growth and holistically, organically. I just wanted to express that it was nice meeting you again after a long time.
Thank you so much. Now we have to go away from COVID now to co-vision. We have to have a vision together what this city will be like. That's important. Let us stop saying COVID. It's co-vision now. That will get us out of COVID also.
Thank you, Rajesh. We have a question from our immediate past president, Sanjay Krishna. He wants to know, what is your view, sir, on Tender Sure projects?
See, the Tender Sure was a project conceptualized by another group who tried to bring, see what has happened is in Bangalore, this road creation has become a bit of an annuity expense for the corporation. They do just enough so that it lasts for about 6 months, and then it falls apart and they redo it again and again every year. But what happens is that the real reason a road stays for a long time is because of efficient drainage and underground infrastructure below it. So Tender Sure was a way to create a model in which all the roads of Bangalore stay motorable, and also the road is not just confined to the black portion where the cars are, but also takes care of the footpath and the pedestrian rights. Now about the first 50 kilometers of road in central Bangalore is now complete, and actually you have walkable footpaths and the road, and in all it is already 2 years old now, and all of you know that Church Street was also done by me about a couple of years ago, and you will find that none of these roads have ever been dug or opened or have had any problem in the last 3 years, and when it rains there are no potholes either. So it's possible to do it, but we are against an entrance system which insists on spending 50 lakhs a year on a road endlessly, and out of which how much of that actually reaches the road we don't know. But instead, if you spend about 3 to 4 crores a road one time, you don't need to touch it for about 15-20 years after that, which is how it's done in the rest of the world. So it's a small, slow change in governance systems, and slowly it is happening bit by bit. It is increasing, and it will take time. There are 14,000 kilometers of road in Bangalore. We have just done 50. So it will take some time. It's also a budget issue, so it will take some time. But slowly, I think the culture has to shift from annuity expenditure to long-term thinking.
Sir, what is your opinion of apartments versus independent houses for Bangalore?
I don't think it's an option anymore. No, you cannot really have independent houses because it's an inefficient use of land. And that is the trend in most major cities. But however, when you build apartments, then you should not overbuild that also. I mean, you have to have a balance between both of them. And then you have to know how to calculate population density of an area. So the people who got lucky and came here earlier and were able to afford a house in the middle of the city, good for them. Now, if you need a house, I think you need to go 20, 30 kilometers outside the city. If you still want it, it's a personal choice. But in terms of housing, the vast majority of people, actually, if you ask me, BDA should not do any more layouts anymore. They should do layouts of layouts, where the urban amenities are taken care of, and mid-rise housing should be promoted in a large way in a public-private partnership with the private sector.
Rotarian Srinivas from Cubbon Park wants to ask a question. Srinivas, can you please go ahead? He's a past president from Cubbon Park, Rotary Bangalore Cubbon Park.
Mr. Naresh, it was an enlightening talk regarding the situation and possibilities of the infrastructure in Bangalore and the green options available and what could be done. That was all the big picture of the whole of the Bangalore city. I feel even the individuals can contribute to this a lot by adopting environmentally friendly and green measures in their own buildings.
Yes.
And that will also go a very long way in transforming the Bangalore from what we see today.
The point is, Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. I am going to reverse that statement. I said, first you see what you have to be changed, what has to be changed, and get involved with start with your own street outside your house. Everybody just looks after their own house. You see, it's a very common thing in most Indian cities, and particularly among Indians, your house will be spotlessly clean. It will be swept every day. It will be mopped every day. But you take all that garbage and you'll throw it over your compound wall on outside the road, or maybe maximum you'll cross the road and throw it on the road opposite side. We have to learn, it is what I call the tragedy of the commons. You have to learn to own, you should say that the street is as much mine, Cubbon Park is as much mine, everything in the city outside my house is also mine. And if you see other people spoiling it, stop them. Go and make a fuss, politely say don't do that. It's not good for the city. And unless everybody starts doing that and say it's not my problem, that is, unless I have been working with trying to remove the sewage from stormwater drains. When I remove the sewage water, you know what I find inside the stormwater drains? Old mattresses, furniture, thermocol boxes. I'm sure that BBMP is not throwing all that in the drain, right? It's you and me who are doing it. And everybody says, oh, traffic is very bad. Please understand that there is no such thing called traffic is very bad. You are traffic. The second car you bought, the third two-wheeler you got, that is adding to traffic. So you have to make these commitments, even though it might involve some personal inconvenience, to learn to live in a more sustainable manner. The moment you do that, it becomes a collective thing, then things will change. We have to learn to stop being selfish.
Yeah.
I would like to add a little more.
Yes, sir.
I very humbly would like to bring to notice of you all that we have started from our own apartment building in Baswangudi, and it is one of the most, I'm proud to say it is one of the most environmentally friendly building in South Bangalore.
Excellent. No, but now you go and fix the road in front of your house. Don't stop within your compound. I'm saying everybody thinks only within their compound. Make sure that the road in front of your house is perfectly done and kept clean and monitoring is done, and make sure that you demand service from your corporator and you start getting involved in the moment you do that, you will go to the next street. The moment you do that, you will go to your neighborhood, and once all the neighborhoods do it, the neighborhoods will join together and we'll have the city that we want.
Okay. Thank you, Srinivas. I would like to add that Rotarian Srinivas, past president from Cubbon Park, I visited his apartment, and he has indeed gone out of his way to make it environmentally friendly. He is also a personal friend of mine. Rotarian Ravi Kumar Raju has a question. He says, the question is the government contemplating on a master plan for the 8 towns around Bangalore? And another question from Sabarishan Venkatesh, our Rotarian from our club, is will the proposed STRR help in decongesting the city?
Okay. STRR is the road which connects all these 8 towns around Bangalore. It's still in a very conceptual planning stage. It's not yet. There is something called the Bangalore Metropolitan Region Development Authority, which is a 8,000 square kilometer, which includes parts of Malur, Devanali, Bayappa, etc., etc. There is a plan, but right now we don't even have the funding to complete the peripheral ring road. The peripheral ring road is half of it is the nice road. Now the government in the next few days, you'll see an announcement saying that the peripheral ring road has to be built first. Once that is done, then we'll talk about that STRR. And the other question you asked about 8 towns around Bangalore. The government has already formed development authorities for all the 8 towns. Now we are talking as a group, we are talking to them to see how can we create a urban experience in all these places and also put in a mobility corridor consisting of both roads as well as railway, suburban railway. All these are projects which cost thousands of crores. So it requires central government approval, it requires legislation. So it takes time. We are a little late. We should have done it 10 years ago. But don't worry, now the master plan has been withdrawn and the new master plan, a lot of us are getting involved because a lot of us are Bangalore people and we love this city and we want to stay here till the end of our days. If it goes on like this, we'll all have to run away. I know, I don't know how many of you know that I tried to go and stay in Mysore for 2-3 days thinking we'll run off to Mysore. You will come running back to Bangalore because the cosmopolitanness of the city is something you will miss on the 3rd day. And if we all get together, I think Rotary Club is uniquely poised to help in this because I think you have a lot of clubs in Bangalore with a lot of members. And many times I need volunteers to help us green parts of the city. Please tell me, if your clubs are willing to volunteer, I will call you. Maybe on a Sunday, we can all get together and do our little bit to make the city better.
Rajaram, can you ask your question?
Yeah, Naresh, we all know that you have been associated in various advisory roles with the government for a very long time. The achievements are being lesser compared to it is bad. I mean, that is what we saw in the presentation today. This could have been better, but it has not happened. So what has been your experience for a very long time? You have been in the advisory board of the government. What is that you would really envisage to change that completely? And again, as you rightly said, will Rotary be a very key factor with people like you?
Yeah. I mean, the point is that the lesson I have learned with the government, working with government, is that most of the initiatives from the private sector as well as institutions like yours fail because everybody wants to take credit. Right? I agree that it's logical that you should take credit because you're doing the heavy lifting, but government doesn't like that. They know they're supposed to do a job, and if they don't do it, and if you go and do it and you say, I did it, they don't like it. So Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, once made a statement saying, you can achieve anything in life as long as you give somebody else the credit. Right? So if you learn to do that and not genuinely leave your ego at home and say that all I'm doing is trying to be a bridge between government and the people, magic will happen. This is a key insight I will give you. Don't take any credit. Be like the ugly Indian. The ugly Indian is one of the role model of how to work in Bangalore city. Do you know anybody in the ugly Indian? You have no idea who it is. It's anonymous and they have made a huge difference to the quality of the urban environment, at least on the main roads and main services. And they get a lot of, all of it is volunteer funded and volunteer done. If you can, each Rotary Club starts a chapter of the ugly Indian in Bangalore, I'm telling you, in 3 or 4 months, Bangalore will be shining. Start with only that. Clean black spots in your neighborhood. Start there. Then you'll understand what is local politics. Then you'll understand what is garbage mafia. Then you'll understand the role of a corporator. Then you'll understand the role of an MLA. And don't think they're inaccessible. Politicians are the best guys to deal with because every 4 or 5 years, they have to come with a begging bowl to you for your vote. No, if you're all organized and say that we are a vote bank, middle class thinks politics is an aberration and they're somehow distasteful. Do the exact opposite and say that everything is politics. If we learn how to demand our service, politicians love the masses. If you go and ask them alone, they will do nothing. Take 10 people with you, every politician will listen to you. Politicians listen to the masses. Learn to work with and many times people say, I don't agree with this guy, I hate this guy in my group is a pain in the neck. Learn to agree to disagree with your peers. Learn to agree at least on what you agree, go and ask for it. Don't leave the disagreement separate. Don't let egos come in the way. If you know how to do this, then also get some technical help to make sure that what you're proposing is technically sound. I'm sure a lot of you are engineers, a lot of you are architects. I'm willing to help any project that is does public good. There is a Latin word called pro bono publico. It means for the public good. If you ask me, every citizen should spend 5 to 10% of their time, effort, and resources to do public good. The moment you do that, life will change. I don't know, I'm sounding like a dreamer, but I have never given up in 25 years. And I have got enough small wins. The wins may not be very big, but I managed to make quite a bit of difference in Bangalore. And many times I've prevented bad things from happening, which is even better than doing good things.
We have a few more questions, sir. I hope, how much time do we have?
I am running out of time because I have another call now in a short while. Today I've had a call from 2:30 to 3:30 onwards every hour. So you'll have to excuse me in a short while from now. You can ask one more question maybe. And you are always welcome to email me if there is any issue.
Okay. Yeah, so one more question. I'm sorry about the others, but our speaker has to leave. Muralidharan Rajendran Rotarian, he wants to know any inputs on the thought of delinking industry and government offices from the residential areas. Currently we see both of them coexist.
No, actually, I think it's a healthy thing to have mixed use areas because I want to walk to work. This whole idea of a central business area and suburban area is a very Western concept. It doesn't work in India, but it has to be near each other. I don't necessarily think it should be mixed up in the same area, which is mostly illegal. I agree with him on that, but you should not be too far from each other either. You should be able to walk to work as much as possible. And all other things you should be able to walk to market, school, doctor, hospital should be within, and recreation should be within walking distance. And only a mixed use, we should stop using all these Western ideas of how to plan cities. There are no best practices. In what India needs is next practices. Don't keep saying London did this, New York did that. That is not the model for India. And we also have to be an inclusive society. We can't push all poor people out to the margins of the city and all rich people, occupy the fancy parts. We have to learn to live not only with people, but also with urban wildlife. We have to make sure that it's an equitable thing for all of us and an inclusive environment. So I disagree with the fact that you should separate it completely. I agree with localized separation, but not too far away either.
Okay. We have a question from our club secretary. You are a co-founder of Bangalore Action Task Force. To what extent have you been able to influence the decisions of the government in taking proper planning for the city?
Quite a few. As I said, you have seen many of the tenders. Sure, I was part of it. Then you have seen this. We are now starting to renovate City Market. We have now done Church Street. We are doing a bunch of other projects for the city, which I will probably talk about in another presentation. But I also have prevented a lot of bad things from happening here. We've got the master plan withdrawn. Then we have made sure that the steel flyover doesn't stop building new road infrastructure for cars. Slowly things are improving in the city. I feel that the city has a hope for the future, but it will only work if all of you, every citizen gets up. And that's why I said Rotary has a great role to play. And your motto itself should say that, there is a way. Where there is, I think one of your mottos earlier on was, where there is a wheel, there's a way. So make sure that that wheel engages with the rest of the wheels. You have a gear wheel. That means make it gear with other parts of the system, and let's make the system work more harmoniously. Thanks a lot for indulging me. I had a good time talking to all of you. I hope I made some sense to all of you.
Thank you, sir. I request our Club Services Director, Rotarian Pranjit, to give the vote of thanks. Pranjit?
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, please.
Hello, am I audible, Bharat?
Yes, Pranjit, please go on.
Yeah. I thank you, Bharat, for giving me this opportunity for extending the vote of thanks on behalf of Rotary Rajmahal Villas. Take this opportunity to thank Mr. Naresh for his valuable time and amongst his busy schedule. And your talk has really enticed us, sir. So, and also as a Rotary, we'll try to imbibe as many as things you have told us to improve the city we live on and also parts of the country. Thank you very much. Take care, sir.